Good evening, everyone. Welcome to your Tuesday night Dynasty Heatseekers. I'm your host, Bryce Frazier. Down below, you'll see you'll see my handle on Twitter, RotoHeatBryce. Not super active on Twitter yet, but on the Facebook page, I am all the time. Join that Dynasty RotoHeat Dynasty Fantasy Football page. It's a great community. Check it out on Facebook. And you'll see a familiar face today. Our fearless leader, Rick Butts, is joining us today. Rick, how are we doing today?
I feel like you're a little flustered or something. You're stumbling over a lot of words. You never do that either. Every time I tune in, you do a great job. And don't be intimidated because you're hosting and I'm here. You do a great job. But no, everything's going good. We're doing a lot of stuff on the back end of Roto Heat, trying to improve the services we provide for all of our viewers. So a lot of cool stuff coming leading up to the season. And obviously my time has been crazy here of late, but I figured, what the hell, we can jump on and talk about some overrated wide receivers.
Yeah, should be a fun episode because the past, I believe 3 weeks, Anthony Leone and I and Brad came in 1 week while I was on vacation, and they started it with underrated wide receivers all the way to when Leone and I talked last week about quarterbacks and tight ends. So now we're going to go opposite and go with overrated. But before we get into that, Leone, I didn't forget about you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Every time you say overrated, I think about being in high school when we'd go to like the basketball game, and we go overrated,
Yes.
Oh, it's my favorite. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here, happy to get into this, and nice to have you here, Rick. Thank you for joining us today. And Bryce, try not to stumble over your words anymore, okay?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Get your shit together, Bryce.
I know. And it's weird because it's like the first week in a while we haven't talked about some like news and notes, which always is Deshaun Watson. So
Deshaun Watson update.
I mean, we can talk about the news that came out yesterday.
Well, what happened yesterday? I must have missed it.
Oh, just that the newest info that came in on one of his new, one of the
details.
The details.
Yeah,
about him humping the table and leaving a wet spot.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there.
Well, better the table than the masseuse.
I mean, true. But the table's filing their lawsuit here in the next.
OBJ had that issue with the kicking net. Now Deshaun Watson with the massage tables. Wow,
doesn't sound like he had an issue with it. Sounds like he got along just fine.
That's true. But
we could talk about Terry McLaurin. He signed a deal. He's going to be back in camp, so that's interesting. I mean, that's good to know. It's good. It's good for
3 years.
71, I think. Yeah,
71.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So owners can now be at peace because out of all the people that like were having contract disputes, you would have thought that Terry McLaurin would have been the last one to kind of like hold out. Obviously, the holdout didn't last very long. They're definitely going to need him this year. So his value is now restored. People can rest assured that his.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, Carson Wentz is better than Taylor Heineke, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
I don't know. Like when you look at Michael Pittman with Carson Wentz last year and the amount of uncatchable balls that were thrown towards Michael Pittman, are we going to see that with Terry McLaurin? Would it have been better if we saw Terry McLaurin get traded a la AJ Brown, or Devontae Adams, moving teams? That may have been the better option, but you needed that to happen so that you knew he was going to play, so he didn't hold out. But so it's at least he's going to be on the field, but I don't know that it was the best thing to happen for, people that roster him on fantasy teams.
Yeah, I guess there's not really any other locations where his quarterback play would have been worse other than like Seattle, I guess.
Carolina.
So, Carolina as well. Baker might be there. Would you rather have Carson Wentz or Baker Mayfield?
I'd rather have Baker, even though we saw how, Landry and Odell were upset, but we also got to remember that Baker last year played injured the whole year. Like he just toughed through it, and he's kind of got the raw deal in Cleveland. Now he's not a top tier quarterback by any means, but I think I'd rather have him than Sam Darnold or Carson Wentz.
Yeah. There's a lot of locations he could land and easily find himself starting in the NFL again and being a valuable fantasy asset once again. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Leone, who is your first overrated wide receiver?
Yeah, this one was pretty easy for me. Elijah Moore I was surprised he's all the way up to wide receiver 28. I think this is just bizarre. I'm actually really shocked he's this high up on the list. I don't know if people realize or not, Garrett Wilson's in town and likely the wide receiver one on this team. Not to mention the fact that Zach Wilson's a huge question mark in itself. So are we going to really believe that Zach Wilson can support not just one, but two top 30 wide receivers? I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, and I'm not even going to believe it until it happens. So for me, if you have Elijah Moore, I think he's a strong hold. I wouldn't sell him low. Of course, if you can sell him as wide receiver 28, then I would be all for that. I'm definitely not touching him at this price, purchase-wise. And I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on Elijah Moore being wide receiver 28 on our updated ADP as of a week ago.
Go ahead, Rick.
I mean, I'm fine with it. And the reason why I'm fine with it is because we know the upside is there for him to be a top 12, top 15 wide receiver. We saw it last year in his rookie year with Zach Wilson. There's no way that the quarterback play is going to get worse, right? Like Zach Wilson was horrendous last year. Most rookies are. That's just the way it is. And they had no help. They improved that entire offense this year. They're going to have a solid run game. So I'm fine with it because there is that upside. It may not happen in 2022, but being Dynasty in 2023, when he's going into his third year, Wilson's going into his third year, or Wilson's going into his second year. And see, I was right the first time. Wilson is going into their second. The other one's going into their third. I think that offense can take a huge step forward. And I think that both of those guys could be top 15 wide receivers on a season to season basis. I think they've got the talent, but it is true. Wilson is a question mark, but when you're paying for wide receiver 28, that does have top 18, 15 upside, I'm fine with it. You're going to lose out on some of those guys, but we've already at least seen that for it was like a 5-game stretch where he was like wide receiver 3 overall or something last year. Like we saw that upside with him. So, I mean, I'm fine with taking the risk there. I think it's okay.
Yeah, he kind of came into his own late in the season, which kind of gave people that probably drafted him like late in the second round last year a lot of hope and that he was going to be that guy. But I kind of agree with Leone. I think that this ranking would be appropriate if Garrett Wilson didn't go there. If anything, right. I'd probably have him a little higher. But there's just a handful of guys behind him that I would personally like to have more. Rashad Bateman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, just some three other younger guys that I think are in as good, if not better, situations, and they're the arguably the best wide receiver on their team right now. So I agree with you, Rick, where I think Elijah Moore has the talent to be a top level receiver. It just sucks that Garrett Wilson, to me, is he's a more polished receiver. Like he's more talented to where he's going to eat into that he's going to be the number one, where Elijah Moore's probably best suited as a number 2. And he can be valuable, like a great tandem, but I just want to see that production from that whole team. I think the Jets are on the up and coming. I think Zach Wilson has the arm talent. Breece Hall is going to be good. I think they're going to be a very good team here in 2 or 3 years. So the ranking right now, though, is just a little too high for me. I think that he is a sell now at that price, where I think it drops during the season, and then you can buy him for what I think he'll be worth in the future. So
I can agree with 2 of the 3 guys that you mentioned, but not Amon-Ra. I can't
really
take Amon-Ra.
Not a truther on him.
No,
I agree.
I think what we saw was
one guy you said that I'm out on too.
Cephas was another rookie that was better than Amon-Ra to start the season, then got injured. And then Amon-Ra was like the only man standing at the end of the year. And we could have the same argument about Jameson Williams going to Detroit that we have about Garrett Wilson going to New York.
That's true.
So he would be. I agree with Mooney, and I'm forgetting the other one that you said.
I can't even remember.
Bateman. I could agree with both of those guys going ahead of him, but there's not a lot below that I would argue much. But I can also see if you say Elijah Moore, you like him better than either of those two. I really could.
Mike Williams is lower than him. Cortland Sutton's lower than him. I mean,
Elijah Moore showed more last year with a terrible Zach Wilson, one of the most inaccurate passers in the league, than Cortland Sutton showed with Teddy
Cortland
B, who
Sutton
was one
is
of the most
doo-doo.
accurate and everything else. So I can see that. Like Cortland Sutton's got to
Mhm.
reprove himself before he's going to move up rankings.
Yeah, excuses are over for Cortland Sutton now as well. Russell Wilson there, of course.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay, we'll go ahead and jump into my first overrated wide receiver, and I'll give Sleeper some credit because I had a very difficult time of finding some receivers that were overrated on this list. But my first receiver here is T. Higgins. He was ranked as wide receiver 10. And don't get me wrong, I do love T. Higgins. I like watching the Bengals, like the Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They're fun to watch. But T. Higgins at wide receiver 10, I just don't know how comfortable I feel with having a team's second best wide receiver ranked above a lot of other talented guys that are a team's first option. Again, there's just guys below him like Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore. I mean, these are all guys that I think are arguably better fantasy assets than T. Higgins. So I just think that's a little high. I'd probably put him closer to the 15 range. So what do you think about T. Higgins at 10, Leone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little high, like you said, but I don't think it's absurd. I mean, last season,
there's not really anybody absurd.
Last season, on a points per game basis, I think he was still a wide receiver one, even with Jamar Chase there. Joe Burrow can support him. Even Tyler Boyd is in the mix too. I mean, it's a really good offense, pass first type of feel. Even Mixon gets his share of work. T. Higgins is probably the best second wide receiver on any team in the NFL, especially when you consider how old he is and the quarterback he has.
He's if you're throwing age in there, then
we're going to talk about the second best wide receiver on the team.
I'm talking about age. I'm talking about. We'll talk about him. Yeah. We'll talk about him later. But when you consider his age and the offense they're on and the situation, I mean, he arguably is the best second wide receiver on any team. Arguably, let's just keep it safe.
That for sure.
Keep it safe so I don't get completely demolished.
Let's keep it safe so I don't get demolished.
So
I mean, is he a little high? Maybe a few spots, but I don't think it's that egregious, Rick.
So any of those guys I mentioned, would you take T above all of them?
I don't know.
Deontay, DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill, and DK Metcalf.
I probably would take them just for the upside. But it's really like someone like with Tyreek Hill, that's close. Tyreek Hill and T. Higgins, that's real close.
I think that's fair.
That's real close for me. Rick?
Okay.
I'm taking Tyreek and DK over him. Short-term DK is a little muddied up because we don't know what's going to happen, but long-term, the dude's just a monster. I do think that Seattle will improve that quarterback spot, whether it's in the draft or the offseason next year. If they don't make a move for Baker, which obviously that's not going to fix it, but that would be a short-term fix as well if it doesn't go well. So I think he's slightly overrated, but this offense, after Joe Burrow got his legs back under him last year, that offense took off. As Leone said, after Tyler Boyd's little bad stretch in I think it was week 6 to 9, I wrote it up in my Tyler Boyd's underrated article. But I mean, he averaged like 13 fantasy points for the last 8 weeks of the season or something as the third wide receiver with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase ahead of him. I do think that Jamar Chase continues to earn more and more targets in this offense. Higgins I believe, was slightly ahead of Chase and targets last year, but I don't think that's going to hold up. But I still think he's going to be 120 to 130 target guy. I think we're going to see a lot of, what we saw like in Pittsburgh with Antonio Brown and Juju in those years where they both hit 150, 160 targets. I think we're going to see that in this offense. I think they're going to throw more. They fixed the offensive line, so you don't have to be as worried about Burrow dropping back. We saw how much he dropped back in his rookie year before the injury. he was dropping back like 45 times a game and throwing that ball. There's going to be plenty of targets to go around for all the guys on this team. So I can understand it, but I do think that Tyreek Hill has dropped too much because of the move, and DK is just another phenomenal talent that has dropped because of the quarterback situation in Seattle.
All right. Leone, your second guy.
Okay, so for me, I went with Drake London, wide receiver 13, and I just really can't fathom taking a rookie wide receiver this early in drafts. I mean, this would be like your wide receiver 1 to start your team in most situations, maybe even wide receiver 2, I guess. But even still, it's like, rookies typically don't come on and do well. And yes, we've seen, examples of Justin Jefferson, Chase, and, there's a lot of other guys that have done this of late. But generally speaking, it's the exception to the rule. And you can name just as many guys who have come in that people thought were going to be studs out of the gate and turned into Corey Davis or turned into N'Keal Harry or turned into, the list goes on.
I mean, don't put Corey Davis and Harry like next to each other. That's just not fair to Corey Davis.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry, poor Corey Davis.
Use like JJ Arcega-Whiteside next to Harry instead of
that'd be fair.
That's just not fair to Corey Davis. Like he did underperform what we wanted, but like not Harry bad.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't as bad as N'Keal Harry, but my point is that with these rookie wide receivers, you don't really know what you're going to get. And so why would you invest a second-round startup pick or a third-round startup pick in a 1 QB league for a wide receiver that you really don't know if he's really going to be good or not? And he's probably going to have a new quarterback next year, because they don't really have their quarterback of the future of now in most, likely. It's just not a great situation on top of it. So it's too high for me. I don't mind taking rookie wide receivers, but I would much rather take a rookie wide receiver like Chris Olave at a huge discount compared to Drake London at wide receiver 13. I just don't understand why you would risk so much when the upside is very similar to other rookie wide receivers in this year's draft class.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
Oh, Rick,
no, go ahead.
It's tough because we're talking about a guy that was taken top 8 overall in the NFL draft. We're talking about a guy that goes to a team that their wide receiver depth chart looks like a Division III college wide receiver depth chart. So he is going to get force-fed in his rookie season, right? And if he is as good as I think he is, then this is going to be a discount because he's going to jump up and be in the wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8 range next year. And it's going to cost even more. Now, there is the opportunity for him to drop because I think it's more likely because of injury than anything else, because he is, even if he's not as good as the 8th pick overall in the draft, he's that much better than everybody else in the wide receiver depth chart in Atlanta right now. I mean, not including Kyle Pitts, right, sure, at tight end.
No,
but he is going to get a ton of targets, so he's probably going to produce in his rookie year no matter what, unless he has an injury or unless he's just that bad, which then even if he was wide receiver 23, he would be a huge loss to you at, whatever pick. So it's a tough one. I do think there are other guys in that range that do have upside and everything, but I'm a believer in Drake London. He's my number 2. I like Garrett Wilson more. But so I probably would wait for Garrett Wilson. But if London was your number 1 guy, I don't mind it that much. I think there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson's not too far behind wide receiver 19. So you would get value there and in that sense. But I mean, yeah, you're looking at a team whose best wide receiver is the dude that played running back more last year in Cordarrelle Patterson. So it's tough. I think they got like Frank Darby and Zamir Ozakias.
I'll pull up their depth chart real quick.
It's comical. I got this. I won this in a break, and I was like, "Did this dude even play last year?" I don't even like that.
Frank Darby
autographed. And he still didn't play. He didn't play in that wide receiver room, so he probably not very good.
You could mail that to me for free. I wouldn't pay for the shipping.
Yeah,
here's this.
Mention it.
So it is a little bit better than the last time that I looked, because the last time that I looked, Zacchaeus and Brian Edwards weren't on the team. Those are the number
Zacchaeus,
2 and number 3.
Zacchaeus was. Oh, did they?
No, he hadn't signed his stuff yet, so it was still up in the air. But those are the number 2 and number 3s. We've got Auden Tate, Demir Bird, who's also new there, Kadero Hodge, Cameron Batson, Frank Darby, and Geronimo Allison. Like, this wide receiver group's just Drake London is the number 1 in this group.
Yeah, it's a bunch of number 3s, is all it is.
Yeah, and guys it's literally a bunch of 3s and 4s. Behind London. So it's going to be London and Pitts. And then next year we see London get attention taken away from him by Calvin Ridley coming back. That helps both Pitt and I think he will be. I mean,
you think so?
I
think Calvin Ridley's more likely to get traded.
I don't know, man. I don't think they can trade him until he gets back on the field. It's just you'd be taking too big of a hit. But either way, that's the Atlanta freaking depth chart, man.
And I've mentioned this. Like, next year, Atlanta's like receiving core could be scary, like scary good with Pitts, London. If London plays to what he's supposed to, because London, I've been saying this, is London looks like Mike Evans. Like, he literally is built and plays just like Mike Evans. So there's your NFL comparison. If he plays to that, this value is, to me, is great. Like a young Mike Evans who has great value for a while, but. I agree with Leone where it is a risk, but it's a gamble. Like, if you're willing to gamble, and he has that upside to be a top level wide receiver for your fantasy team. But to me, at that pick, I will side with Leone where I think the risk is greater than the reward. So I'll probably steer clear and go after guys like I just mentioned earlier.
Yeah, there's enough upside with these other guys that have a much safer floor. But, so what's the purpose of
my point is, I'm not taking him there, but I wouldn't really argue with somebody that did if they That's like fair. Him over those guys, right? Like I said, I like Garrett Wilson more, but a lot of people had London as the number 1 in their wide receiver class this year. There's not enough for me to argue against it. I'm taking some of the other guys myself personally, but I could see him definitely fitting in and being a top 12 wide receiver getting drafted next year after what he's going to do in his rookie year, most likely.
Yeah, that's fair, because he should be a product of a lot of volume, which is always good with fantasy. It doesn't matter how
they're going to be losing. They're going to be losing, and they've got 2 guys to throw to right now, and a bunch of question marks.
Just who hopefully the 2 quarterbacks that are there can throw the ball, because Marcus Mariota hadn't been seen in a while, and Desmond Ridder, I think, is a pro style quarterback, so I think he kind of can be, I wouldn't surprise me to see him kind of take over and actually be pretty decent. So I think, Rick, you're going to disagree with my next guy, because you kind of hinted at it earlier with Carson Wentz, and I put Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver 16. And again, I do like Michael Pittman Jr. I just don't like him at 16. Like, I'm looking at him more of a low end wide receiver 2 rather than a high end, which is what he's ranked here. And again, my argument is that there's just guys behind him that I would just much rather have. I get it. He's a young guy, and he does have Matt Ryan coming in there and throwing the ball. And Matt Ryan is far superior to Carson Wentz. Don't let last year's numbers, confuse you on Matt Ryan's ability. We talked about him last week of being underrated. That team was just a dumpster fire starting at the O-line. And if you don't have any O-line on your team, you're not going to be able to throw the ball whether your dudes are open or not. Like, Matt Ryan was taking the ball, running backwards, and getting sacked or getting hit before he could even throw the ball. So I get it. He goes there, and it might help Michael Pittman Jr.'s numbers. But again, guys like Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy, or just Chris Godwin, just a handful of guys behind him. Again, I think I would rather have in Dynasty that can still give me production, I think, greater than his for the next 3 to 4 years. So, Leone, what are your thoughts on Michael Pittman Jr. at 16?
Yeah, I got to disagree with you here. I just think there's enough upside with Michael Pittman. I don't think he's in a terrible spot. He's young. I mean, he performed really well last year, and even it wasn't the greatest spot with his quarterback. So I don't see how he does worse than last year. If anything, he'll do better than last year. So I don't know. I don't really see an issue with where he's at ADP wise, value wise. I think he's a pretty solid buy. I don't think you have to really worry about too much going wrong with him where you're really going to regret it later, barring injury, which anyone can get hurt. So that's, it's really not something really to factor in. So yeah, no, I don't really have an issue with his ranking personally. I'd love to hear Rick's thoughts on this. I'm sure he has his brain moving. So let's go. What do you think, Rick?
This dude was really efficient with his routes. So if you look at Player Profiler, total route wins, he was number 3 in the league amongst all wide receivers. Routes versus win rate versus man, number 8 in the league, won 44.7% of the time. But the problem was his catchable target rate was 76.7%, number 44 amongst all wide receivers. This dude's winning his routes, and his quarterback target accuracy was 55th in the league amongst all wide receivers. The quarterback play did not help him at all last year. He was still 15th in receptions, still 16th in yards, but he was 20th in TDs. I think that improves with Matt Ryan. We know Matt Ryan will lock in on his favorite receiver. The targets, I think, go up, and the accuracy goes up, and all we do is see Michael Pittman go up.
Okay, so let me ask you. I can only see one guy above him that I would want. Like, I would want him more than. And that's Drake London. Like, I think I'd rather have Michael Pittman than Drake London. Mm-hmm. And I see 3 or 4 guys below him. Is there any guys above him that you guys would rather have? You have the sleeper ADP?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
I don't have it up at the moment.
Here, I'll mention some to you, Rick. So there's above him, there's DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman.
I would like him over Deontay Johnson. I think him and DJ Moore are really close. I'm not saying that he's underrated at his price. But I could see him have a top 6 wide receiver year with that Indianapolis offense.
And this is my point and that's my point too. We were just talking about these rookie wide receivers. Like, how is Drake London higher than all these guys we're talking about right now? Like, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, like, I'd much rather have Pittman above Drake London at 13.
What about Deontay and DJ Moore? Those are the 2 directly above him. Deontay's really close, but I'd rather have him over DJ Moore. Okay, so then Judy, Godwin, and Evans, Pittman over all them.
Pittman, I'm taking Pittman.
Probably Pittman.
Okay, I think I would take those 3 still above him, but. So you guys basically say he's ranked accordingly, and I just say he's a little. Again, I couldn't really find like guys egregiously high. Like, you took them all, Leone, and you put them on the list.
I would, and again, this is a situation where I wouldn't argue hard against Godwin or any of those guys.
It's fair.
Needing to be below him. Mm-hmm. I do agree. Drake London, I would take Michael Pittman over Drake London. But again, if somebody said, I just think Drake London's got top 5 wide receiver upside, and that's why I'm taking him there, then I'm not gonna push hard against that at that spot. I could see that as well.
That's fair. So you guys, basically, he's ranked accordingly, and I just think he's a little high. Like, it's nothing crazy. I had Michael Pittman Jr. in a lot of redraft last year, and he was a great asset. Like, because you got him for a steal. Like, nobody was taking him. Mm-hmm. Like, he was a 3rd or 4th bench player, and he became a starter. So I like him just because of that. So I can't complain. All right, Leone, go ahead and bring up your next one. Horrible.
I love my next pick. Okay. Don't get me wrong, but I do love Jalen Waddle. I just don't love Jalen Waddle to the point where he would be my wide receiver number 1 when he's not even the wide receiver number 1 in his own team. Okay, Jalen Waddle at wide receiver 8 is ludicrous. Tyreek Hill Like, it's like, do you guys not realize, like, or I shouldn't say you guys, I should say Bryce. Bryce, do you not realize that Tyreek Hill is now on the team? Like, I don't understand how could you take, and not just you, but I'm just saying everyone in general on this ADP, wide receiver 8, how would you take Jalen Waddle 8 overall for wide receivers, 8 overall at this price point? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Look, Tua last year, his quarterback averaged just over 200 yards a game. In his rookie season, he was like around 180 a game. But Tyreek Hill wasn't even there last year. So Jalen Waddle had 140 targets last year. I mean, where is this offense coming from where Tyreek Hill is going to get his and Jalen Waddle is going to get his too at wide receiver 8? Like, it just none of this adds up. So I just don't understand. Look, I like Waddle. I think he's a really dynamic player. But for fantasy purposes in a dynasty league, when both these guys, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, are locked in for 3-4 years down the line, like, how can you bet on Jalen Waddle being a wide receiver 8? Like, none of it makes sense to me. So, Bryce, if you can have this come into some sort of sense, I'd love to hear it, because I just don't get it. And I had a share of Jalen Waddle on one of my teams, and I was shocked when I saw this. So go ahead, Bryce.
Well, you're in ages, so I'm surprised you'd be like super shocked that Waddle is ranked so high when Tyreek Hill is only getting older. Like, his best years, I think, are behind him at this point. Like, I get it. Tua is not proven yet, but when a guy like Tyreek Hill comes onto a team, it immediately increases that team's touchdown upside. Whether the quarterback is, middle, I think Tua at this point is middle of the pack, and I think he has the potential to be a top level fantasy asset when it comes to like maybe like the top 15 to 8 is probably like his his like where I think he lands the next year or two. I see a big step from Tua this upcoming year. Waddle was a product of volume this past year, and we're not going to see 140 targets again. But I think with the less volume, he makes up with it with quality of targets, because now he is the number 2 wide receiver on the team. I'm not arguing he's better than Tyreek Hill, because that would be ludicrous. Tyreek Hill is a better player right now. Waddle is going to take over before Tyreek Hill leaves Miami. But right now, Waddle now go against the second best corner on a team. So he's going to have better opportunity to get open. Tua and him already have a connection. And like I said earlier, Tyreek Hill comes onto this team, the touchdown upside for that team increases. That means Waddle's touchdown upside increases. So I don't think his numbers are going to be staggering. Like, he's not going to make a huge jump, right? Like, I think I believe he finished as wide receiver 14 last year. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him land around there again this year. Now, I know he's ranked wide receiver 8, but I think that from there, he's going to continue to increase, because at that point, Tyreek Hill is now getting about 29, 30 years old, where Jalen Waddle is stepping into his prime years, and he's going to take over, and he's going to start doing like being the number 1 receiver at that point, and he's going to be ready for it. Is what I am predicting. You could shake your head all you want, Rick. Jalen Waddle is going to be the next Tyreek Hill when it comes to the way they play is very similar. They're speedy guys that run short routes. They catch the ball. They get rack. That's just how it's going to be for the rest of their career. So I think that's why Jalen Waddle is ranked that high. I think it's not this upcoming year, but it's the years that are going to be following it. And when it comes to Dynasty.
The problem is that right now Tyreek Hill is the highest paid wide receiver in the league. He's making $30 million a year. He is going to lead this team in targets for at least the next 2 to 3 years. The upside is capped, and for a big reason of what Anthony was talking about is this is also an offense coming from the Shanahan tree. And what do?
They run the ball.
They run the ball, and they run the ball a lot. They went out and drafted, they went out and signed every running back this year. And
a bunch of mediocre dudes running the ball.
Well, okay, so when have mediocre dudes not excelled in a Shanahan running offense?
I don't think you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and you run it that much. They're going to have to throw. They're going to have to throw the ball to win games. Like their team, they're not that good yet.
What are you talking about? Their defense is one of the best defenses in the league. The offense
their defense is only getting older. Like their cornerbacks have regressed. They've regressed.
This sounds like we're talking to a Patriots fan, doesn't it?
I'm just saying. Like, I think Miami's good, but they're regressing. Like Miami is not getting better on defense.
They've got guys that have been efficient runners already, and this is going to be a much better offense for the running game in Miami than it has been in the past couple of years. Mostert, we don't know how many games he's going to play, but has always been an efficient runner, a dynamic runner.
I like him the best.
They've got so much speed. Not only that, but you still have Mike Gesicki and you still have Cedric Wilson. So not only have they added one wide receiver that is better than their number 2 last year, they've added 2 wide receivers that are better than their number 2 wide receiver last year, plus 84 running backs. In an offense that's going to run the ball a lot.
And I get what you're saying about Tyreek Hill, maybe being on the downslope of his career. I mean, I guess he just turned 28. I think it's reasonable to expect Tyreek Hill to be good through his year 30 season. So we're talking this year, next year.
I think he'll be good, but I think Waddle's going to surpass him there.
And here's the other thing that a lot of people are forgetting. They think that this Mahomes and Tyreek Hill connection was all deep balls. That is not the case at all. Tyreek Hill's average depth of target has dropped like 3 years in a row. Mahomes had one of the higher percentages of his passing yards, coming as yards after the catch. They had 4 guys that ranked in the top 20 in yards after the catch last year, with Kelsey, Hardman, Williams, the running back, and Darrell Williams, and Tyreek Hill. They don't need Tua to throw the ball 40 yards for Tyreek Hill to be successful. No. You hit him on the move, he's going to be fine. And he's getting paid a lot of money to be fine. And he's going to be the guy that gets a shit ton of targets. Again, I don't think that makes Waddle bad, but over the next 2 years, I think you're going to get him as a discount from where he's at now, because he's not going to put up wide receiver 8 numbers for the 2022 and 2023 season.
And the other thing I want to say real quick, when I do a startup draft, I'm looking at getting guys at a price where they will increase value. If Waddle has a great season, he's not even going to increase value. Like, he can't get much higher than where he already is anyway. So like, you're basically. Does that mean
you wouldn't draft Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson?
No, because they're already at the top of the mountain. But I'm talking about Waddle. For Waddle to get to the top of the mountain, it's like the outcomes is like it's really almost impossible. Like, it's not even really practical given his quarterback situation, given Tyreek Hill on his team.
Here's the thing too, is a lot of people say this because Jefferson and Chase are the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers, that their value can't increase. That's not true at all. Right now they could cost you 3 first-rounders, and a year from now they could cost you 4, right? So acting like they can't gain value just because they can't move up their ranks. Well, I agree. I mean, we saw it with Christian McCaffrey from one good year to one great year. Like, he didn't move much in rankings, but his value was exponentially bigger, right? So that's something that you have to remember. They can't really move up their rankings, but they can add value. But the thing is with those guys is that even if they have an off year this year, you're not going to see them drop. Right. You're not going to see them drop very far. Whereas if Waddle comes in with, only 80 catches, he loses 20. And
900 or 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. He'll drop
Juju, right? Because everybody was talking Juju could be the number 1. And then after that year where Brown left, Juju had an off year and he dropped like 30 spots in drafts, right? Not as a wide receiver. He didn't drop 30 wide receiver spots, but overall he dropped like 3 rounds in value after one season. That's the kind of thing that can happen with Waddle with the new makeup of this team, more talent around, and a different, they already ran the ball quite a bit, even though they weren't very efficient with it. They're going to be more. They're going to be more efficient with it, though. This offense is going to be a better scheme than what they had last year.
Well,
the run game is going to be more efficient. That's just the Shanahan tree.
I really don't see Waddle and Hill's stats this year being like miles apart. Like I really,
we got our first bet of the season.
We already did. We already have a $5 bet every week. Remember Waddle versus Hill every week.
Oh yeah,
we did a $5 bet.
You guys already made the bet.
Made that bet.
Yes, it's a weekly bet.
Waddle That's why you keep track. Make sure to make the sheet this year.
I'm gonna make
so
an
I can always check and Google.
We're gonna put it up.
That's a great $5 every week.
Let's write a quick article every week about our bets and where we.
That's a great. I don't know who came up with the details of that. I don't remember if I did or not. That's a great bet though. That's a great.
I did.
Bet.
I said I'll take Waddle every week with Hill.
Yeah, that's great.
I bet it's like 50-50. I bet it's like Hill and Waddle.
Yeah, that's a great bet. I love that.
I think Hill will do better.
I love that bet. I love that bet.
Huh? No,
all up at 10 a week.
Is good.
You sure you don't want to do 50?
5 is good. And they both got to be playing.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fair, but
yeah, we'll see. I just think the connection.
You might get some Tyreek Hill decoy weeks in there that might help you out. He did that for the Chiefs a few times.
Yeah. All wide receivers.
The Chiefs also had Travis Kelce, who's led the league in receiving since 2016. So, he may be a tight end, but he's been the best receiver in the league for the last 5 years.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. That was good.
All right, we got off topic there. What's up next?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bryce. You're up.
I don't even know if I agree with this pick at this point.
You disagree with your own pick. Why don't you go to the honorable mention then? Go down to the guy we had saved at the bottom.
Yeah, I will, because I do actually kind of like my third guy. I was just struggling because, again, I just don't have a good argument against it. It was Garrett Wilson at 19, and I'm looking at the list, and I'm like, it's not, and I was looking at Evans and Judy right below him. But
I didn't even notice your number 4.
My number 4? Isn't it bad? I just scrolled down.
I just scrolled down at wide receiver 48.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What am I supposed to do? Like,
do him next.
Low too.
Do him next.
I did a lower guy too.
No, well, I'll go over the honorable mention because we've kind of been on that track already, and it's Treylon Burks at 17, and it's the same argument that we had for London, right? Like, that's just too high for a rookie wide receiver for me personally. And I get it. There's a lot of people that have Trey Burks as their number 1. Like before the draft and everything, like he had all the tools to be he's efficient all over the field, short routes, like in the backfield, run after the catch. He's a big physical guy. There's a little bit of concern because he has asthma and he's been struggling with the heat in Tennessee, but he'll get in shape. That's not something I worry about. It's about
you don't get asthma in shape, just so you know. That's not how.
Well, I'm just saying. Like, I think that there's doctors there that'll make sure that it's not going to play a factor when it comes to him being, because there's so many guys that played in the NFL. Jerome Bettis had asthma, and he wasn't huffing and puffing off the field all the time.
But every asthma is different, though. It's not.
Okay.
It's not
that's fair.
Treatment fits.
But he was able to play college ball. So obviously he can play at a high level and deal with this, the asthma. So the doctors will get him right. I'm not sure if the weather or what has been playing a factor in that, but it's about as relevant to me as Jamar Chase's drop problems last year is my point. But again, I just not willing to invest a high end wide receiver 2 ranked at wide receiver 17 on a rookie that just hasn't proven himself. Ryan Tannehill's there, and he's pretty good, right? I mean, but that team leans so heavily on the run game that the stacked boxes can make even average quarterbacks look better than they really are. Because when Derrick Henry's not back there, Ryan Tannehill's production, decreases tremendously. So Derrick Henry's coming at the end of his years too. So I also worry about Treylon Burks's quarterback play here in the future, along with maybe just being overrated when it comes to talent, because at Arkansas, he wasn't playing like top tier teams all the time. He did play well when he did play very well against Alabama, which got him kind of on everybody's radar at the college football level. So, but again, just overall, that's just too big of a risk for a rookie wide receiver when there are veteran players that are still relatively young that can give you great value for the next 5 years. So Rick, what are your thoughts on Trey Burks at 17?
I mean, I agree because, like I said, I like Garrett Wilson the most out of the rookies, and he is after him. But I mean, if you like these guys, you're not gonna. I mean, you're gonna have to pay the price, right? We talked about it last year with Kyle Pitts. I didn't like Kyle Pitts at his draft position last year, and especially in non-tight end premium leagues. But We see it every year with receivers and running backs. It's just something that we're always going to see. But like I said, I would rather get Garrett Wilson. If I was drafting a rookie in that position, I would go Garrett Wilson over Treylon Burks. I wouldn't even take Wilson where, London went. But the thing that I would argue with is worrying about the quarterback, right? Because I remember when another Tennessee Titan wide receiver was coming in, he was one of the most talented in his draft, but he fell in rookie drafts because Marcus Mariota was his quarterback. And my argument that whole offseason was, if Marcus Mariota is bad, the quarterback situation is going to change in Tennessee. AJ Brown is the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver in this draft. And he was going at pick, I think he went from pick 8 to pick 11 in my leagues because he was in Tennessee. We saw what happened. Mariota didn't last very long. Tannehill took over, and AJ Brown's one of the most valuable wide receivers in the league now. So that would be my only argument with it. I wouldn't worry about the quarterback situation. It changes fast. It could be bad for a year or a half a year. That doesn't mean that he can't be valuable because of the amount of volume that he'll get in that offense. And they're gonna look to improve that if the quarterback's bad anyway. So, one thing I always tell people is remember, Josh Gordon was high and drunk and put up the most yards in the league with missing 4 games with Brian Hoyer and a bunch of guys you can't remember.
Yeah. There's a lot of talent that didn't get used in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't worry about the quarterback situation either for Treylon Burks because, like Rick said, the league changes so fast. And I've heard people say, oh, well, yeah, I don't like Tannehill and I don't like Malik Willis either. Well, guess what? The entire NFL didn't like Malik Willis. There's a reason why he slipped so far. They took a chance on him because they don't like Ryan Tannehill that much either. But that doesn't mean Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback of their future. That just means they got him in a good spot. They see what happens, take a little bit of upside. They don't really lose anything if he doesn't pan out. So I agree with Rick in a sense where, look, Treylon Burks, don't be worried about the quarterback. This is Dynasty. So much can change. Look at AJ Brown. People are saying, oh yeah, I don't like AJ Brown. He's with Tannehill. Now 3 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, he's not even on their team anymore. Who cares? So I just think that's kind of funny. Also with the asthma thing, I said this a few weeks ago. Look, I have seasonal asthma. It's the reason why I don't do a lot of physical activity in the summertime, but I can run miles at a time in the wintertime. And so I'm not worried about asthma.
See, either. I'm the opposite because I have asthma as well, and I can't do either. It's tough for me, whether it's winter or mine doesn't.
Everyone's
change.
Different.
And that's my thing is that I do worry about it more than Jamar Chase's drop issues last year.
Sure.
Because that's something that you can control. You can't control the asthma. But I'm not saying that it's going to...
I'm assuming, without looking at any of his medical records, I'm assuming that it's probably a seasonal thing. To Bryce's point, he played college ball. He kicked ass.
Your body
it's not even a weather thing. How's it a weather thing? Tennessee's not that far away from Arkansas. I mean, I don't have a map out of the United States, but I'm sure both temperatures are pretty similar in either state because they're right next to each other. So I'm not worried about the asthma personally. I think it's a good opportunity to buy low. I would not buy him at this ADP.
So how do you buy him low?
What's that?
The hell are you buying him low for?
Yeah. No, I would buy him low. I wouldn't buy him at this ADP.
What I meant to say. Somebody's freaking out about the asthma. They already invested this much.
People are freaking out about the asthma. People are.
Your body changes too. So it may be something that got worse. It could get worse in the last year, right? We've talked on stream about how I'm allergic to allergy medicine. I wasn't for the first 20 years of my life. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm allergic to allergy medicine and cough medicine. So I'm not saying that I'm worried and that I'm not going to that I wouldn't draft him or anything like that. But it is a bigger concern than a guy having drop issues or, a sprained ankle or something like that.
I agree because in the worst case scenario, he is damaged goods. He's like the lemon law. Like when you buy a car, when you buy a car that's a lemon, you're going to get a new car. And in this case, if you draft him, you're not getting just a new player. You're stuck with him. So I feel that. I'm not too worried about it, but at the same time, I do agree that this ADP is a little bit too high.
Yeah, I'm not like moving him down or doing any of that. I'm going to let it play out. And if it does end up being something that hinders his career, then that just sucks. But I'm saying that there's no way for me to make an assumption on how bad it really is, why it is what it is, why it's showing up now and it didn't in college, or did we just not hear about it in college, or all of that stuff. I just don't know because, well, I'm not his doctor and I haven't seen his paperwork either. Dr. Leone over here can assume all he wants, but all it does is make an ass out of you and me.
I went to college long enough to get a doctorate, so maybe that counts. Maybe no, does that not count?
Long enough? What are you, Van Wilder?
I was like 8 years. Yeah,
like carry the
4-year piece of paper.
8 years for my 4-year piece of paper.
All right, Leone, get into your last guy.
Oh,
you need
my
to
last
leave this
guy.
man alone. Leave him alone.
Oh, dude. Every chance I get to talk, if I have a chance to talk crap about Hunter Renfrow, I will. Wide receiver 41, which does, after listening to all the other guys we've talked about, that doesn't sound as bad. But when you look at who else is being drafted around him at 41, like it's ridiculous. Like this dude is the sell of all sells. Rick earlier mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like it's obvious why this guy had so many catches last season. He was the only wide receiver on the team. In comes Devontae Adams. Waller is presumably going to be healthy now for the season. And just like, look, his first 2 seasons, he averaged like 50 catches a season. Last year, he had 100 catches, over 100 catches, 1,000 yards, 9-10 touchdowns. Like, isn't it obvious that he's going to just totally regress down to like, I don't know, 70 catches, 790 yards, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 touchdowns. Like, it's just common sense. Like, you don't even, I mean, Rick, if you have some more like concrete factual data to back up what I'm saying, please share it. But it's just, to me, it's common sense when I look at these graphs. Like,
hey, Rick, if you can help my case, please do it.
It's like, it's just common sense, though. Like, I don't know why. And this is another thing where some people, like, they'll spend, hours, like, diving into the data. I'll be honest with you. I don't really think it's always necessary. Hunter Renfrow's the reason why. Wide receiver 41, I think it's criminal if you take him that early in a draft. I mean, shoot, look at some of these other guys on the list in this area. I mean, almost everyone else below him I'd rather have. Bryce or Rick, if you guys want to talk, go ahead.
Okay, here's the thing. There are guys behind him that I would like, but those stats that you were just saying, I will take out of a guy that I get at wide receiver 41.
With no upside.
Well, I disagree.
How is he going to get?
Because here's the thing with Renfrow is that he is one injury away from being a wide receiver 2 for you. And I'm not a Renfrow fan either, but I do believe Waller and Adams both are going to get an ungodly amount of targets. Okay. But there's very few wide receiver 3s. It's the same reason why I like Tyler Boyd a lot. One injury ahead of those guys, they are immediately wide receiver 2s in your fantasy lineup. And you get flexibility. You can flex them on weeks when you have bye-week fill-ins, stuff like that, fairly easily. I do believe that he's going to be consistent. He's not going to dud you on most weeks, right? He's not going to get you a 4-point week. He's probably going to at least get you a 4 for 40 day on most occasions because he's going to be open because of Waller and Adams. So I'm fine with him there. But there are guys like, for example, Jamison Crowder, who is wide receiver 60 in most formats, is a guy that I would rather have because we already know the role, even with what else is there, that Beasley played in that Buffalo offense. So I would agree that he's overrated in comparison to another slot receiver like that. But at wide receiver 41, you're not losing a lot if he doesn't, like if you don't play him every week. And he's still going to, I think, be a consistent scorer, just not high end like he was last year, but he's not going to lose you a lot of weeks if you flex him.
So yeah, I see both sides, but I'm gonna lean more towards Leone's side because at this point, like, yeah, Hunter Renfrow could be, a guy you plug into your lineup based on maybe you don't like another guy's matchup, bye weeks, and so forth. But there's just other guys around him at this ADP. At this point, I want to go with the highest upside. So let me take some stabs at some of these rookies. Let me look at John Mechie. Let me look at George Pickens. Michael Thomas is there. Like if he comes to 75% of what he was, comes back to 75% of what he was, I'll take that all day. Michael Gallup has the opportunity now to finally maybe show his ability. So I will say, if you want to go safe, I can't blame you for taking Hunter Renfrow here at 48. It's not going to hurt you, like Rick said, but there's just guys that I think have more closer to top 20 upside that are in that area where I think some of these rookies are more appropriately ranked, like I just mentioned, George Pickens and guys like John Mechie. So
I'll take Renfrow over Pickens all day long, but the other guys I could, I would rather have Michael Thomas, and I would rather have I'm not looking at the ADP right now, so I don't know who's all there.
Michael Gallup.
Just believe me when I tell you, like there are way too many guys.
Thomas,
David
Gallup.
Bell. I like David Bell a lot too. Leone sold me on him, so it's just I would just rather take. I at this point in my draft, the way I draft, I like to gamble at that point because if I gamble, it's not really going to hurt me. But like you said, like if injury strikes my team, I would feel more comfortable putting Hunter Renfrow in my lineups, especially since some of these guys are earlier in their career.
And that's the one thing you got to factor in with a lot of the picks in that range, right? Is what happens if somebody goes down ahead of these guys. Like if I can play this guy and not lose weeks, but if an injury happens ahead of them, what do I get out of it? We know what we get as Renfrow as the number one wide receiver if Adams would happen to go down, or if Waller targets opened up or something like that. So you got to factor that into that whole thing too. It's not just that, but I do like Mechie's upside, but you're talking about an injury. Gallup's an injury. That's why they're below. Michael Thomas injury, why he's below. Absolutely. So there are reasons why those guys are where they're at. We haven't seen Michael Thomas play in a year and a half.
Yeah. And you can't just disregard that Hunter Renfrow is going to be on the field all the time. Like he's going to be on the field probably more than most of these guys, except maybe Michael Thomas, who comes back.
Is Tyler Boyd behind him?
Oh, I am willing to guarantee he probably is. I didn't even see him on the list. We got Calvin Ridley down here too.
Yeah, he is.
He is.
Yeah, I would rather have Tyler Boyd and Jamison Crowder.
Tyler Boyd is 64.
What about Jacoby Meyer?
What was that?
What about Jacoby Meyer? Would you like? I think him and
sure he's lower, but
no, I'm saying, would you rather have Renfrow or Jacoby?
I'd probably rather have
Renfrow at that point.
I think I would too.
I
just think they're pretty comparable. So
but I'd rather have Calvin Ridley, and he's not even playing this year. Like, I mean, it's just I just don't understand.
But there's reasons, 41. But there are reasons why they're there, right? Like, there's reasons why a lot of those guys we named are there is because they're missing time.
Sure.
Before they're going to get back on the field. And it's not like, it's easy to argue against, like, if Michael Thomas was never injured and he's healthy going into the season at that spot, but we still don't even know when he's coming back.
Yeah. And I understand
out for a year. So it's just there's definitely arguments for him to go ahead of them because he's going to play and you don't know what's going to happen with these other
guys. And there's arguments for taking Renfrow at 41 too. Like you said, if Adams got hurt or Waller went down or
I think it's a safer pick.
I think it's assuming everyone's the other thing is too, if Renfrow got hurt, talk about where his value would go. I mean, everyone has an equal chance of really getting hurt. And if he got hurt, I mean, he would crash and burn. So whereas if someone like Tyler Boyd got hurt, I think they would retain a lot of their value where they're currently at.
I don't think, it's easier for Tyler Boyd to retain value at wide receiver 64 than it is for a guy at wide receiver 40 to retain value for one. But I don't think Renfrow would drop that much depending on the injury. Obviously,
but it's just like Calvin Ridley. Like Calvin Ridley, like literally is losing the entire season And yet he's
but it's not
lower.
it's not just that though, because Calvin Ridley was already dropping because he was sitting out for mental reasons last year.
Yeah, but and I still would prefer him over Renfro. That's my point. Like he hasn't played.
Right, but that's right. But there's a overarching thing here, right? I would prefer Calvin Ridley too. I think Calvin Ridley is one of the most talented receivers in the league, but it's not so. There's an argument of why you're taking somebody like Renfro over Calvin Ridley, Michael Thomas, Mechie, injuries, mental health, and betting, sitting out a year. Ridley's barely played in the last 2 seasons after he finishes this one. It's not just a easy apple versus apple thing, right? if all those guys were healthy, they would be well ahead of Renfro.
Well,
right. Yeah. But we don't know what's going to happen with those guys. Now, if you start naming some healthy guys that don't have any issues, that we don't know anything about, that are there, that are clearly ahead of him talent-wise, then I could get on board with it. But
yeah,
you haven't told me any yet that weren't injured or suspended.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to name one, but I think he was hurt for like a week or 2 last year.
Well, a week or 2 is different. Is he healthy now?
Yeah, Kadarius Toney. I'd rather.
Okay, I would rather way rather have Kadarius Toney.
Yeah,
he does have. But the Giants are already talking. There's already rumors of trying to trade him.
That's
having
fine.
issues in the locker room.
I
agree, but
Brandon
also
Cooks, same thing. Brandon Cooks, whatever. You don't have to be on the same team to be good.
Right, but there are reasons I'm saying to why people are scared of drafting him higher. It's not just Kadarius Toney's going behind Renfro is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
He's got a lot of upside. He's got top 12 upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really he's a dude I've been trying to get in all my leagues at this point. So, all right, I'll just quickly mention my last guy because honestly, the reasons to me are the same in the sense of there's just a lot of guys behind him, and it's Christian Kirk. Obviously, he broke the wide receiver market with his deal with Jacksonville.
Fuck the Bears.
Yeah, messed everything.
Completely fucked the Bears' plans on wide receiver this year.
Yeah. What were the Bears going to do? Do you know?
I think they were going to take shots at a lot of guys, I think. And then he gets $21 million, and they're like, okay, well, we can't
afford anybody.
We're not ready to do that.
Yeah. So, he's ranked all the way down at 48. So, again, it's not really going to hurt you if you take him here. It's just again like what we were just mentioning about for me it's the same argument where there's just a lot of guys with just more upside that I think I'd rather take a stab at, like the rookies I just mentioned. Kadarius Toney is ranked below, I believe, Christian Kirk. So again, it's not egregious. At this point, you can just kind of pick guys that you like for whatever reason, right? He comes onto a team and he probably is that team's best receiver with a young quarterback who ideally they do form a connection, but I just don't know how good Christian Kirk really is. He was inconsistent when he did step up as the number one. Like when DeAndre Hopkins went down, he would have really good games and then he'd have really bad games. And I just don't like inconsistency when I'm drafting wide receiver, but this is wide receiver 48. So you're not going to find any consistent wide receivers at that ranking. So it's just, again, there's just a handful of guys behind him that I would like. I can't really argue if you do take him here. Leone, go ahead. You look eager.
Thanks. So I would argue the reason why he was inconsistent last year is because of the offense. They had so many weapons. It's like a spread offense. Kyler Murray's just throwing the ball left and right. He can pick to go to Rondale Moore. He can pick to go to DeAndre Hopkins. He can pick to go to that. But in Jacksonville now, they paid him as their best wide receiver. He is their best wide receiver. I think he'll be more consistent because they don't really have a lot of other options to really throw the ball to anyway. Last season, he ended the year as a wide receiver 2. At wide receiver 41 ADP, you could argue he's at a value, given that he's probably going to finish better than wide receiver 40 this upcoming season. So I don't agree with this pick at all. This was actually my least favorite pick of yours. I think if you can get Christian Kirk at wide receiver 41, that's a pretty good value. I do not think he's overvalued. If anything, I think he's undervalued. Rick.
I agree. At 48, I'm taking him every time. You could have told me 36. I'm taking him at 36 probably not because of the talent, but because of the volume that we're going to see. Jaguars paid him $21 million a year. Now
he's getting less this year, though.
Now I will
his
say
contract's weird.
That I think Jamal Agnew is good. I think we saw him coming on last year before his injury. I don't think Marvin Jones is bad. I don't think that Laviska. I don't know if he's going to end up being there. He may get moved or something before the season, but there is talent in that passing game. ETN is probably going to get a lot of passes.
Evan Ingram's there now.
Evan Ingram, but there's still at 48. I think it's still a value. You're going to get a ton of targets to Kirk. I don't think it's as bad of a picture as Anthony painted with the receiving group there, but yeah. And I want to clarify because I just saw something in the chat. I did not say that Cedric Wilson was better than Waddle.
He knew he was kidding. He was kidding. Scampers was kidding.
All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure because I was saying he was better than Devontae Parker as well.
No. Scamp is
wanted to be clear there.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I think he's a value at 48. He could have a big year just based on volume alone, especially if that offense improves a little bit. And it looks like they're going to have both of their running backs. It looks like James Robinson's coming back in camp, so he should be ready to go. That's going to help them because I think the 1-2 punch of Robinson and ETN is going to really help Lawrence out. Because people don't realize how efficient and good James Robinson has been on a bad offense the past 2 seasons. Like he's been damn good at the running back position.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette was the same way with him before that.
No. Leonard Fournette was not nearly as efficient as James Robinson.
Well, yeah, I guess he was more fantasy.
He got a lot of touches, which worked out, but
that's true.
But Robinson has been even more efficient in this offense, and we saw that whole thing last year. But ETN's going to be big in the passing game. Evan Ingram at tight end. The wide receivers all have some level of talent, right? It's not like it's not the fucking Falcons or the Bears or the Green Bay.
Patriots too. They're terrible.
Patriots too. Yeah, Devontae Parker's their number one.
Yeah, that's our number one.
I just said Cedric Wilson.
Kendrick Bourne's better than Devontae Parker, I think, right?
As a Niners fan, I'm biased. I love Kendrick Bourne. As a Niners fan, I am biased.
I would say Bourne's probably the most talented, but I think Parker's viewed as their number one. I would be interested to see their depth chart.
I'm getting ready for some Scott Fishbowl, my Scott Fishbowl draft, and now I think I'm going to have a share of Christian Kirk.
Any celebrities in your division?
Well, I think I'm going to be with Howard Bender, a Fantasy Alarm. I don't know. I'm doing the live draft in San Francisco. So I'm not sure on the details yet, but I'm going to be there. And now seeing Christian Kirk ranked, I mean, man, I think I'm going to have him on my team, and I'm going to try to buy him.
I don't hate him, but I think we'd all probably want Kadarius over him, right?
I like over who?
I like Tony over Kirk. I do, yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't here for the underrated show. Kadarius Toney, if I saw him, he would have been probably my first person underrated at 50, wide receiver 50. So then what about Michael Gallup? Christian Kirk over Michael Gallup?
I think you have to right now. I do like Michael Gallup long term, but we don't know how that injury is going to affect him. And he's not like his status with Dallas isn't like secured past this year. Like looking at his contract.
I got to go in for you, Leone. David Bell or Christian Kirk?
Kirk.
Okay. So I mean, like, it's not like great. It seems like he's almost ranked appropriately because there are a ton of guys above him that you guys would rather have.
There's a ton of guys ahead of him that probably have more talent, but not as much opportunity, and that's matters in fantasy football.
That's fair.
And I think he's going to get a ton of targets over the next 2 years because of the amount of money that he's making. You pay, and it also this son of a bitch $21 million a year. You better.
And what it also shows. What it also shows is it's okay to wait on wide receiver, especially in a super flex draft. Like there are a lot of wide receivers. I mean, if we're talking about Christian Kirk at 48, like you don't have to draft really early on wide receivers. You can get some other spots, especially quarterback in a super flex.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So we have a couple of questions. So we're gonna go ahead and end the show for those listening to this later in the form of a podcast or anything. So thank you guys for listening in. We will be back next week with overvalued running backs. So tune in for that show. So we will see you next week. Thanks. And Leone, is this your question? Is this you?
No, it's not me.
Oh, okay.
I need to like get an alt though and like troll you in the comments. I thought about that now, so I got.
Okay, now I can see the picture.
You're gonna see Anthony is here during the season all the time. He's a stalwart during the season. He's in there every week.
I've seen him before, but I saw the facial hair like just in it. And I was like, "Is that Leone?" I couldn't really tell.
No, this guy looks a lot better once you get his picture more than just this.
Yeah, when it's zoomed in, yeah, that looks pretty good far away though.
He said,
"You look good when we can't see you."
Yeah. I almost mentioned this last week when you were talking about DK's quarterback play. Like, he might get a ton of volume. Like, he might get a lot of volume, which will help the poor quarterback play, but. Last season with Geno Smith and a watered-down version of Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf still finished as wide receiver 20. While the pairing of Smith or Locke would hamper his ceiling, is his floor still a low-end wide receiver 2? Rick, you seem like you have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he is the red zone threat. No competition as the red zone threat. I mean, Tyler Lockett, obviously big play, but when they get in the red zone, DK's the guy you throw it to. He's 6'4", diesel, son of a gun.
Yeah.
Throw the ball up, let him go get it. I think I think that's his low point. And if they improve that quarterback play, we've seen Sutton, right? We were talking about Sutton earlier. We've seen him flash with Locke. Locke's not afraid to throw the ball deep. So if he's your guy,
that's true.
Like,
that's true.
He can heave it, right? We could see, think of Jay Cutler, right? Jay Cutler, Rex Grossman, Brian Hoyer. We talked about those guys in Cleveland with Josh Gordon. Those guys will heave it up, and DK can win against anybody. That doesn't mean the quarterback's good, though. You don't. That's such a misnomer in fantasy, right? It takes a good quarterback to win NFL games. It does not necessarily take a good quarterback to make somebody fantasy relevant.
That's true.
I agree, but to play devil's advocate here, Courtland Sutton last year with Drew Lock played 16 games and finished.
No, he didn't, because Teddy Bridgewater started.
Teddy Bridgewater. Okay, but I don't hate Teddy Bridgewater. I know you don't either. But Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, 16 games. He finished wide receiver 42.
All right.
So
I'm not as talented as DK.
I understand. I understand that DK is better than Courtland Sutton. I'll give you that. But I don't think you can say his floor is top 24. Like, I wouldn't go there. I would say, hey, his floor is probably top 36. He could be like a wide receiver 3.
I'll put money on it.
I think he'll do better than that.
Leone?
I think he'll do better than that. But the question is his floor a low-end wide receiver 2? No, that's not his floor. That is not his floor. Is closer to what Courtland Sutton did last year. Which is
not. DK Metcalf is so above Courtland Sutton that his floor is double his.
I would just throw in another wide receiver.
21 is now his
quarterback
floor.
And compare them.
You're acting like Courtland Sutton wasn't like a highly coveted draft wide receiver.
Yeah, but he hasn't done anything in the league. Like, DK's already been good in the NFL. Like,
I understand that.
I mean, Courtland Sutton had
DK's already better. So his
had 1,100 yards.
It's higher. It's definitely higher.
Courtland Sutton had 1,100 yards in 2019. I don't remember who else was starting quarterback for.
I understand.
Denver in 2019.
All I'm saying is the question is this his floor? No, you're lying if you say that's his floor. Like, his floor is definitely much closer to 35, 36, not
I don't
top
agree
24.
If he's healthy. I don't agree. If he's healthy, he is a top 24 wide receiver.
No, there's no way.
All right.
The Broncos are a run-first team as well. So that comparison for me is not accurate. Like the Seattle Seahawks are not going to be able to run.
Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen.
Yeah,
and Drew Lock. Those were the three fucking quarterbacks that Sutton got 1,100 yards with. It's just proof that you don't have to have a good quarterback to put up 1,100 yards.
Well, I know Blake Bortles and
Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson proved that. I know, and I agree with you, and I do expect him to finish in the wide receiver 3 range, maybe even wide receiver 2 range. But to say that that's his floor, I think that's wrong. I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good advice to say, hey, his floor is top 24 like that. I just think that is not true.
So is he droppable?
No, he's not droppable.
And that's what you're kind of saying, because Cortland Sutton's droppable.
And that's what I'm
So is Mike Williams, according to Anthony.
Oh my gosh.
There's no way that his floor is 35
his volume
to
is going to
36.
be
Like,
too high.
And he is so far above Cortland Sutton. Like, it's just you can't compare their floors when their talent is that far. Like, his floor is probably like 25, 24.
Obviously, okay. Let's say it a different way, right? Every wide receiver in the league right now has a range of outcomes, a portion of their range of outcomes that ends up outside the top 24 wide receivers. I don't care if you're Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all of them do. We've seen it too many times.
Sure.
DK Metcalf, there's a very, very, very small chance that he is outside of the top 24. Volume alone, touchdown, equity, all of that stuff played in.
But I'll tell you what, it's a lot larger. It's a lot larger than a lot of other wide receivers you'd rank in your rankings. If we're talking about Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, if we're talking about all
Deebo
of these
Samuel's
elite,
got a similar range of outcomes.
I agree. Deebo's range of outcome is similar to DK's.
If we're talking about the top wide receivers in the league, it is much more likely for DK Metcalf with Drew Lock or Geno Smith or Jacoby Brissett or whoever they have back there, much more likely he's going to finish outside the top 24 than any of these other wide receivers we're talking about.
See, I don't agree because I could argue the same thing. We don't know if those guys might be a better passer than Trey Lance is for Deebo.
Deebo would still get the value out of the backfield.
He doesn't get wide receiver 1 value out of the backfield. He put up 1,400 receiving yards last year, right? Like, it's the combination of both things that made him as valuable as he is. I mean, obviously he was a very good receiver, 1,400 yards.
There is no way Deebo Samuel scores less points than DK Metcalf this season. Assuming they both stay healthy, there's no way.
Definitely a range of outcomes for that.
I think they're similar. I think you throw AJ Brown in there too. Like, I think all those guys have a range. It's super unlikely for him to be outside the wide receiver 24 range. I think it's just so small of a chance that, like, I'm gonna put him there all day, every day. Like, it doesn't matter for me with a guy that talented. I think Tyler Lockett was a product of a connection with him and Russell Wilson as well. Like, I compare it kind of to Thielen and Cousins, where it's like he and DK were even. Really? I think he and DK were even.
I think Tyler Lockett is a very good wide receiver, but
I think he's good, but I think the connection
it does help when you're paired with one of the best deep ball.
Right, but like that
argument could go against DK as well.
Yeah, but you look at these two wide receivers, and which one's obviously the more talented one? I think it's DK. And but the production did not really show that. The production showed that they were equal, pretty much. So I think we see that gaps. We see the gap in talent, and with like I think Lockett's connection with Wilson was stronger than Metcalf's connection with Wilson, so that evened out the talent / that talent gap. Where now I think that gap expands, where I think Lockett sees the way bigger drop off, and Metcalf is again a mid to low end wide receiver 2 this year, with still wide receiver upside just because of just the kind of athlete he is. That's how I see it.
Sorry, I have to send this payment.
Yeah, let me give you my
Cole
what?
Kmet.
Cole
Kmet.
All right, select rookie to 10 gold.
Prism?
Yeah. No.
Select. You said.
Okay. But it's a Raz, so I don't know. I'm not guaranteed, but
I got some Panini Black Cole Kmet.
Oh, it's an auto too. I didn't even realize it was an auto. I just seen Kmet gold to 10 and grab
How
2
much
spots.
$10,
$8. 10 spots at $8.
Just bought 5 spots.
I didn't even, dude. We were.
Can you guys explain what you guys are even talking about? Like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
So, a Raz is the guy's selling a Cole Kmet Select autograph gold,
like on eBay or something.
Number to 10. No, it's in a Facebook group. So it's 10 spots. They're $8 a spot. So you pick however many spots you want.
So you could buy all 10.
You could buy all 10 and close it. I did that with a Fields card yesterday. So
how much is each spot for the Cole Kmet?
$8.
So at most it would be $80.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So if you pick, like I picked numbers 3 and 8. If they go to random.org, they put the list in, they roll the dice to see how many spins you're gonna have for the random, and then they run it. You know how I've ran them 7 times every time anything?
No, I don't know how you run them, but that's fine.
I mean, I've literally done live videos for leagues that you're involved in, and you never paid attention. Mm-mm. Standard.
I am.
But
I mean, you want me to lie? I'm not going to lie.
But whoever ends up on top on the random wins the card for whatever you paid.
Yeah, I think that's cool. So, like, basically, you can get like an $80 card for $8.
Yeah, for $8.
In your case,
yeah,
16.
You get one spot.
Right.
I've seen it happen a million times.
Right.
Or a lot of times, if I really like the card, I'll take the shot and I'll just do 50-50. Like I'll tell them, give me all the even numbers and just have 5 of them.
But you lose a lot of money that way too, because you don't
potentially.
I mean, potentially you can. I mean, I've lost plenty, but I've also gained a lot of value because typically what I'll do is what Bryce said. I don't typically just take 2 spots. I want to get variance my way as many times as possible. So I'll play, if I really like the card, I'll play 3, 4 spots, 5 spots to give myself a better opportunity to go on a run, right? Because you're less likely to win like 3 or 4 in a row if you're doing 1 spot, right? Because you got a 10% chance instead. So, and then I also try to keep my numbers the same instead of bouncing around, right? Because if you're bouncing around numbers, you have the same opportunity every time, same percentage of a chance.
So
you also have the chance of the same numbers hitting, like the same 3 numbers hitting 6 Razes in a row.
And when they run these, do they do it live? Like, how do you know?
They record a video that's time-stamped and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
All right.
So they'll post and say, I'm doing it. You can leave, Bryce. We're done with you.
Well, we don't have any questions left, so I'll go.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Great show.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll talk off stream. I'll tell you.
Okay. We will be talking about overrated running backs next week. So tune in next Tuesday night. We'll see you then. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.